We're so glad to have you back for another episode of WVU Energy Express on West Virginia Public Broadcasting and YouTube. I'm your host, Zach Harrell. Today, we'll be spending some more time at WVU's Jackson's Mill. We're going to start our day by learning about candle dipping, because there was a time when not everybody just bought their candles from a store. Sometimes you had to make them at home. Our friend Joe is back to give us some insight and walk us through the candle dipping process. Take it away, Joe.
Hello. My name is Joe Obudzinski, and I'm the Program Coordinator for History and Heritage here at WVU Jackson's Mill. Today, we're down here in our historic area in the Mountain State Building. This building we use as a programming space for a variety of different activities and programs throughout our year. Today, the first activity we're going to talk about is candle dipping. We know that 200 to 300 years ago, electricity was not here in this area. When the sun went down, we had to have other ways for us to be able to see. One of the most important was candles. Now, the difference between the modern candles that we have today and the candles that people made back then is that most of the time we get ours from the store, but the vast majority of people had to make their own. So what were they making them out of, and how did that process work? In this region, one of the most common things that they used was actually animal fat, if you can believe it. It was called tallow. Specifically, beef tallow was the ideal. And what this was a part of the animal fat. Now, when they would boil this fat, it would be what was called rendering. And it would actually separate into two different layers. One layer was called tallow. This was harder and it was more like wax. They would use string that they would have twisted together, and this would have been from any fibrous material, wool, cotton, anything that they had available to them. Now let's talk about some of the other types of candles, because of course I've mentioned beef tallow and most people would probably think, well, what about something like beeswax? Well, beeswax absolutely was around, and people definitely did use it. The problem with beeswax was that it wasn't always very readily available. It's also one of those things that if you're going to use lots of candles, it's going to take a while to get enough of that wax in order to be able to make lots of candles. Now, in all of these cases, you used what you had available, but most commonly in this region, it would have been tallow candles, at least until about the 1850s, and that's when we started getting oil out of the ground, and chemists started to realize that there was actually a byproduct of pulling out this oil. It was this white, waxy substance called paraffin. Now, paraffin is still the most common type of candles that we have today, even though this is slowly being replaced by things like soy and other things like that. Now, we have this idea that people who lived back then were constantly burning candles. But remember that if you were only making candles about once per year, you wanted to make sure that your candles were going to last from one fall season to the next. So you burned them when you absolutely needed to. Now, there were generally three reasons why you would burn candles. You'd burn candles in the middle of the night if you needed to see what you were doing. The other thing was if you absolutely needed to do some work by candlelight that could not wait until natural light, like the sun being out. And the last would be on rare special occasions, things like Christmas and stuff like that. Most families would produce somewhere in the neighborhood of a few hundred to as many as 1,000 candles. It would depend on how much of that beef tallow you had and also how many people were in your family. The important thing was that they were doing this within the fall, so they needed to be able to cool the layers in between the dips. Every single time you dip a candle, you're putting a layer of wax on that candle wick. Once that happens, you need to let that layer cool enough before you dip again, or else you're going to take the wax right back off as you dip it back into that hot wax. You might think, my gosh, this would have taken days or weeks or even months to do. Well, people back then were very much of the mindset that you worked smarter, not harder. And one of the things that they would have utilized was something like this. This is a candle paddle, or at least a replica of one. And the idea behind this is that these hooks on the bottom would actually have candle wicks hanging from them. So you'd have, in this case, about a dozen hanging from the bottom of this candle paddle. A family might have a half dozen or even a dozen of these things. And so the idea was that you could dip multiple wicks at one time. You could allow that layer to cool as you hung it up someplace, and then you would dip the next one and so on down the line until you got to the end. By the time you got to the last candle paddle, the first one should be cool enough to start again, and you could repeat the process. In this way, you could dip 100 or a couple hundred candles within the span of about an hour or two, and so the process would take a little bit less time. Don't get me wrong, it could still take you a day or two to finish everything, but it did help speed the process up. So now that we've learned a little bit about the history of candles here, let's talk about how to make them. You can use something as simple as a little bit of candle wick. Now this is something that you can buy online, or you can use other fibrous materials twisted together if you want a more old-fashioned type of candle. This is by no means how people back then would have been doing it. As I mentioned, they would be doing it over a pot over an open fire with boiling wax. Well, as you can clearly see in front of me, this is not boiling. What I have in front of me is a small deep fryer. We put it on the lowest setting possible because all we're looking for is to just melt the wax. Now actually in here, we actually have about this much water and only about this much wax at the top. And generally what we do is we start off by handing everyone a small wick and saying, this is your candle. But I also have a small knot tied towards the top. It's just a simple knot. Now normally what I do with this is that's your stopping point. This allows you to hold the candle wick above the knot, allows you to dip up to the knot, make your candle below that, and never have your fingers in the wax. Now this is going to take a process between doing this and then dipping it in some cool water, which I have here in this metal bucket. But again, remember, you do have something that is very hot, so please be cautious and please only do this with adult supervision. When we're making our candles, what I generally like to do is tell everyone that you want to dip it down into the wax, bring it up. So dip one, back up on two, and then drip, drip, drip. This is going to allow excess wax to drip off before you move it over to the water bucket and will avoid a lot of messy cleanup later. Now, I'm actually going to start with one I've already been working on because I've already dipped it a couple of times, so it won't be quite as twisty. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to dip this down into the candle pot. And so, as I said, dip, up, drip, drip, drip. Now once I've done that, I'll dip it in the cool water bucket. If I need to straighten it, which you might from time to time, it shouldn't be too hard. Don't pull on it too much. You don't want to break it or crack it, but you can shape it slightly and then go ahead and dip it again. Dip, up, drip, drip, drip. Now again, you can dip it in the cool water bucket and again straighten it out. After so many layers, you won't have to worry about this anymore. It'll start to hold its shape. In fact, I have one that's a little further along, and this one we have probably close to 10 to 12 dips on here, so it's been going for a while. And as you can see, it'll hold its shape a lot easier. Now when I bring that one out, dip, up, drip, 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 into the cold water bucket, and back over here, and then back to the candle pot again, dip, up, drip, drip, drip. Now, you might notice as well, cool that off for a moment, that there is a little bit of an excess tail building on here. Now, some people like to leave that, and you can if you'd like. However, if you continuously dip your candles for a while, you might end up with a very, very, very long tail. And this is going to make it hard to fit into a candle holder. It's also going to be wax that really will probably never melt very well as you burn your candle down. So every so often, every 10 or so dips, I like to trim the bottom just a little bit. And what this is going to help you do is help you have a nice rounded shape traditionally that you would see in candles along the bottom as you dip. So again, dip, up, drip, drip, drip. Now when we do our activities, we usually do between 25 and 30 dips. By that point, your candle will look something probably closer to this. It's a little bigger than, say, a birthday candle, but it's a very nice sized candle for something like this at home. And this is something that we normally let our participants in our programs take home with them. So if you're doing this, dip, up, drip, drip, drip. Now let's say this was your last dip. Now what we want to do now is some of this candle will still be a little bit warm. Even though it's not completely soft wax, it's still going to be cooler. So what I normally tell everyone to do is go over to a cool water bucket, hold it in there, and this time count really slowly to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now that candle's going to be cooled off enough that you can hold it up, and now you have a finished candle for a little project. But if you'd like it to last just a little bit longer, a good idea is to keep it in the freezer. Now you might think that seems strange, but if you think about it, since the wax and the wick are going to be near frozen, it's going to take them longer to thaw as they're burning down, which will make the candle last just a bit longer. But remember, each one of these is dipped uniquely, so it means each one of them are going to look slightly different. That's one of the neat things about hand-dipped candles. Now, talking about a 50 to 60 dip candle, this is not quite as long as they would have made. These are a little bit shorter, but a candle of about this size is what we're talking about 50 to 60 dips. You might also notice that there's a little bit of coloring in this particular wax, and that's because this came from a batch that we had put a little bit of green dye in there. You can put dyes and scents in your candles as well. Have fun with it, that's part of the point. Now, if you don't have something like this, and you don't want to do it over an open fire, which again can be quite dangerous, what you might do is you might actually boil a little bit of wax over a very deep pot over the stove. Again, put it on the very lowest setting, because again, we don't really need this to be boiling, we just need the wax to be melted. And once it is, we will actually be able to dip candles. But now you know at least the basic process of dipping candles, and now you know a little bit about the history of it. There's so much more to do and so much more to learn and so much more to investigate. So if you're interested, you could go online and find even more stuff. There are wonderful sites across the country that do this, and we do it here at Jackson's Mill during some of our school programs and camps throughout the year if you'd like to come and be a part of it here. But I hope you enjoyed it yourself, and I hope that you learned some stuff, and I hope that you give this a try as well.
As we head outside this summer, it's important to keep safety at the top of our minds. And with that said, we're going to head over and visit our friend Jeff, who's going to walk us through some first aid and CPR basics.
Hi, I'm Jeff Schmoll, and I'm the Program Coordinator of Outdoor Education and Recreation here at WVU Jackson's Mill. So with the weather being nice and warm, and as we're heading in the fall, everyone wants to get outside. However, it's important that we're safe while we're out there. So I'm gonna go over a few first aid things that hopefully you'll never have to use, but you'll at least have available if something were to go wrong. The first thing I'm gonna go over is hands-only CPR. Now, anyone can do hands-only CPR. You don't need a certification for it. If you're interested in that, you do need to be 15. So when you get older, you can seek that out, or your parents or guardians can go ahead and do that. For hands-only CPR, what you want to do is you want to take both hands, interlock the fingers of the top one, make sure the bottom fingers are nice and flat, and you want to put your hands right in the center of their chest. Now, you want to make sure that your shoulders are right over top their chest, over top your arms, and you're putting your whole body weight into it. So I'm going to demonstrate that with just a quick 15 compressions. To make sure you're doing compressions fast enough, you can always count while you're doing it. So that sounds something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and that will be a good enough rate to keep their heart pumping. So make sure on an adult you're going deep enough. You may hear some weird noises, some kind of crunchy noises. Just ignore that, it will be okay. For an adult, you want to go about 2 to 2.5 inches. If they're a little bit bigger, about 1/3 of their chest. For someone who is more child size, you only want to go about 2 inches. With that in mind, the most important thing to do in an emergency before even this is trying to get help. If there are other adults nearby, grab them and bring them over and have one of them call 911. If they can help, make sure that they do. Now, the really important thing is when to stop CPR. So you want to go for either as long as you can. If you get too tired and you have to stop because you cannot go any longer, that is okay. Never risk yourself trying to save someone else. Same thing, if wherever you're at, you don't feel safe anymore, there's a storm rolling in, there's wild animals, anything, get out of there. Make sure to protect yourself before trying to save someone else. The last reason that you all would want to stop is if someone with some sort of training or certification gets there. Let them take over. They will let you know, especially if it's emergency services. When emergency services arrive, they're going to notice very quickly that you are doing hands-only CPR, and they will step in as soon as they are able. Again, I hope this never has to be used and you never have to do this, but it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And now that we have the basics of CPR covered, let's talk a little bit about wound care and what to happen if you get some cuts or scrapes. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. I'm gonna bring in just a box of bandage and some alcohol wipes. So I already have on my hand just a little red marker. This is gonna be our scrape for today. So the most important thing with wound care is keeping it clean. Warm water and soap, especially antibacterial soap, will clean out everything, especially if you do it right after. So much so you don't even need antibiotic ointment as long as you keep it nice and clean. Now, if you've been outside, you got some dirt in it, it's always best to err on the side of caution. But if you don't have soap and water, you do have these in your first aid kit. All you want to do, take an alcohol wipe and just rub it on. It might sting a little. You can see even here, it's wiping away most of the mark. That's what it should do. It should wipe away any blood, dirt, germs that you have. And then, before you put the Band-Aid on, you want to go ahead, give your hand a quick shake, let that dry out a little. The reason you want it dry is because Band-Aid adhesive does not like sticking to wet surfaces, no matter what it is. So, always clean and dry a wound. Now, the important thing when putting on a Band-Aid, I know we're all guilty of this because I know I'm guilty of this, we don't want to touch the pad. The pad is sterile, so it's perfectly clean. We want to put it on without doing that. Just go ahead, slap it there. If you have someone to help you hold this, that's great. But you can see, put it on one side, put it on the other, all clean, all protected. You don't have to worry about infection, and as long as you keep it clean and replace the Band-Aid periodically. Now, with all that out of the way, I hope you never have to use it because I want you all to have a fun and safe summer in the outdoors.
Jeff is back for our next segment with some more helpful knowledge. He's going to show us how to tie a handy knot in a pinch.
Hi, I'm Jeff Schmoll, and I'm the Program Coordinator for Outdoor Education and Recreation here at WVU Jackson's Mill. So right now we're standing in front of our Tango Tower. This is our big climbing structure that we have on property here, and we use a lot of different knots when we're climbing it and setting it up and all of that. So what I'm going to show you today is just a real quick and simple easy knot that has a bunch of uses. You can use it to tie something off, just have a simple loop that you need, any number of things, and it's called a bowline. What you're going to do first is you're going to take your rope and you're just going to make a little loop in it, and you want to make sure the top part of the tail is towards you. You're going to take the end of that tail, you're going to pass it through that loop towards you. You're going to go down and around the free hanging tail and then back through the loop away, and you're going to go ahead and pull it tight. And now you got a nice little loop. If you wanted to tie this around something, same process, make your loop, and before you pass it through, you just want to wrap it around whatever you're passing through. I'm just using my hand. All the steps are the same. Through that loop towards you, around the free hanging tail, back through, pull it tight. I'm gonna pretend that stayed on my arm the whole time. So, again, real simple knot. It won't get cinched down no matter how hard you pull it, so it's super easy to untie. It's great for quickly tying something off that you're gonna come back to later, just need to stay still. Good for just having a loop that you can go ahead, wrap around something. Bunch of different uses for this. I highly suggest looking into it more because there's so many things you can do with that. And if you ever wanna come to our tower, you can go ahead, give us a call, or come to one of our 4-H state camps when you get older. I hope you all have a fun and great summer in the outdoors. Have a good day.
Can't wrap up today's episode without a trip to the kitchen. Let's see what we've got cooking up today.
Hi, thanks again for joining me in the Family Nutrition Program kitchen. Today we're making taco sandwiches. This would be a great recipe that the kiddos could help with, and really the sky's the limit as far as the ingredients that you include. So today we're going to make a turkey and cheese taco sandwich. I have some whole wheat bread, some turkey lunch meat, some shredded cheese, some mayonnaise, and some mustard. So for this recipe, we've got our bread, and of course a taco is in a round taco shell. So we're gonna take a circle cookie cutter or even a large rim to a glass or jar and cut out our circular taco shell. So once you have your circle shape, we're gonna roll it with a rolling pin to just flatten it out a little bit. And I'm gonna do 3 or 4 of these. This is a great way to add some fiber and whole grains with our bread. So I'm just gonna roll out these circles, and then you could save this crust for breadcrumbs or croutons for a salad. I've got my 4 little soft taco shells, and I'm gonna add just a little bit of mustard, and mayonnaise, just like a taco with sour cream and salsa. And you could do so many different variations of this. You could do peanut butter and jelly and add fresh fruit, or just leave it as peanut butter and jelly. You could do ham and cheese. I've got some turkey. You could even add a slice of apple for a crunch. Lettuce and tomato would be good. Really make it like a taco. And then we're gonna add our shredded cheese. And then simply fold it up, and you've got your little taco sandwich. You could even attach a little toothpick to get them to stay together. These would be great packed in a lunch. But who doesn't love finger sandwiches? And this would just be a great alternative to a sandwich. Easy to grab and go and customize any way you want. I hope you give this recipe a try and check out our YouTube channels for all of our other recipes. Thanks so much for joining me today in the kitchen.
And that brings us to the close of another episode of WVU Energy Express. We hope to see you right back here next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.